As far as the guest experience goes, I mean, all the data, and I read reports every week as you do, it is consistently the majority of travelers want to have a positive impact on where they're going. They want to see it impact things locally. They want to see it positively impact environmental things, and they expect it.
Welcome to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast, where we interview industry leaders in all areas of sustainable hospitality and tourism. I am your host, Kathy Sue McGuire, President and CEO of Sustainable Hospitality Solutions. We specialize in gaining internationally recognized eco certifications for hotels, venues, events, and destinations. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to have with us today Greg Poirier. He's the Global Director of Sustainable Hospitality Certification Program called Audubon International. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
So first, let's just get an overview of what Audubon International is. For example, what it is, how it works, and what makes it different from other eco certifications in hospitality.
Well, sure. Well, thanks for the question. I think one is our legacy and our history because we've been around for a bit. Up until 1987, the organization used to be the state chapter of the Audubon Society, the bird group, which we're no longer a part of. And we rebranded as Audubon International to do outdoor certifications on sustainability. So our legacy was not just with birds, but all wildlife, habitat, and landscape, right? And did a variety of things, but what happened organically is we started getting conscientious and interested golf courses. Right now, we've got thousands of golf courses in our membership and hundreds of them that are certified, which is a whole different thing when you do the outside world. From that led to organically having golf course resorts, which then kind of gave birth to the hospitality components. And back in the day, first with a grant from the state of New York, they were paying for hotels and things in New York State to become certified under a state program. We then were asked by Reedy Creek Development in Florida to kind of write their standard, which became, and we gave away all that work. And now the state of Florida also has what is sort of a competing organization, but it was based on the same foundations because at the end of the day, we're passionate about the impact. And so, we've shared a lot with a lot of people, including 8 or 9 years ago, we were one of the foundational contributors to the Global Tourism Sustainability Council that was developed through the UN, right? Which unfortunately doesn't have as much American or US representation, but we're global in mind, and we're in 37 countries collectively at Audubon International with certification members and group members, and we do golf, we do hospitality, and we do communities.
Oh, that's terrific. We're most interested, I think our audience is in the hotel component, hospitality component of it. So walk us through the process for certification first, and what are the key milestones and common challenges that hotels face?
Well, there's a lot in there, right? So we could go on and on. Hopefully, we'll have a good dialogue and ask me questions. So the process is first, somebody's interested. They want to know how easy or hard it is and what's going to do in their already busy work world, right? And these are wonderful because they're very interested in becoming more sustainable. And it's not like it's a top-down requirement. So which are the two buckets that they tend to come in initially. So it's a really easy process. It's all online. You find your category. We use select service, which parallels in all other structure, condos and fractional ownership type of resorts and hotels. And then we do full service hotels and resorts. And then we do destination full service resorts. And the reason why is because the more you go towards the destination resorts, the more amenities they also have that we want to cover, whether it's spa and other types of recreation, a meeting space, conference space, multiple restaurants versus a quick and go, a select service restaurant. So those are our reclassified categories today. So they go in and they find which they fit in on, and it's all transparent. It's on the website. So what you pay, what the annual dues are is all very much there. And the process is simple. They pay the initiation fee, regardless of the category, it's $500. And then anywhere from $500 to $850 would be the annual dues, depending on the complexity and the type categories they fit. So very affordable. And that's their total expenses beyond reimbursable travel, which averages well below 40% of what it costs a lot of other people that they start at for doing on-site audits. We only do on-site audits, and we should talk a little bit more about that. I'm a big
Yeah,
proponent, and
yes.
I'm scared about virtual audits because I think it'll hurt everybody.
Well, let's before we get it, yeah, I definitely wanted to get into that with you. And before we do that, break down all the categories and the different attributes that each category has that people will want to look at to become certified.
Sure. And we also have this very transferable on the website. You can download kind of our certification standards, and it's basically a guidebook to what you can work on and what you're already doing and not. And it's downloadable. It's on the website, and it's always something we'd like to share with a prospect. What happens after that is they get a designation application. So that's like our SAT exam, if you will, that kind of gives a quick evaluation that then is validated with an audit, and there's steps in between. So we don't share that until they join, and then they get that as a part of their certification process once they're a member. And those cover all the scientific categories of all built sustainable projects, right? So in the built world, which can include hospitals and universities and anything that's got a built primary component. So we cover energy, right? And that can be the building management systems, the energy management systems, the types of energy being used, how much of it's from renewable sources. There's a lot of things in the energy compartment. The other compartments, and these are all the scientifically valid, programs that everybody has done something parallel or similar, or imitation's a great form of flattery. So I think we're widely imitated too, just because we've been around for a while. And so the other categories being waste, which is one of my new biggest focus areas because it tends to be the weakest in the market globally and in different markets all over the board. We follow water usage, water conservation, water reuse, and then we cover things like indoor air quality, chemicals being used on the facility, whether it's for cleaning or landscaping or what have you. And so those are the general scientific buckets. And coincidentally, they would fit for a sustainability program for any built environment. Those are all common things to just being a built environment. What makes it more unique then for hospitality is both our communications, outreach, and community related programs, right? So we could break them down. Communication, is sustainability yet, because it's going to be one of your core operating values in the culture you build for your operating hospitality team practicing the craft, right? And the ideal is and Nirvana is when they actually posted on their job postings, or a sustainable oriented focused enterprise, right? Some kind of short term, but then they have to live up to it. And that means it's part of their onboarding training. That's part of their on the job training. That's part of the recognition. That's part of the career development. And those are things that I think the industry needs lots of help, of which you've got plenty of assets that can meet that challenge, right? That's kind of at your core. That's what I come to understand, that one of your superpowers is in that kind of bucket, the training category. Because at the end of the day, you need a very functional green team for it to be considered valid and authentic. And certainly if you want to achieve gold or platinum standards, which is what our categories are: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, where others might be 1, 2, 3, and 4 keys or what have you. And really, as you know, sustainability is not a destination, it's a journey, and it's a commitment to a journey. And it's like continuous improvement. And we'll never get wherever there is, because the standards will keep moving up as the collective industry improves on working on it. And, as a hotelier and loving the industry, I've not seen anything more powerful than unifying staff culture, than making sustainability part of their everyday work job. And whether they're really on fire on it personally or not, from a staff standpoint, there's always a big chunk of them, a majority most likely, that feel passionate about it. And boy, are they more proud to work there. Do they find better ways to help recruit people because they recommend it? And who does that for service jobs anymore, right? And sustainability is such a big angle. So the communication starts internally, and then it's like, where does it go externally? We haven't seen, our platinum members aren't really yet embracing, exploring how much cool things they're doing and how meaningful and impactful they are, for whatever reason, because it's new and they just not sure about the comfort zone or how the market reacts. Where we know, seeing the data firsthand coming out all the time, that it's very much growing and very positive. It's never a negative. It's only a potential positive in the marketplace to be able to talk about your sustainability in a valid and authentic way. And I think that's also one of the areas that people shy away from, right? Because being a target for greenwashing versus promoting all the good things you're doing.
Yeah, there's several things you said there that I want to visit a little bit longer. Is for example, waste being the weakest, and that is true because there seems to be this myth that you have to have single-use disposable items for the guest experience. And that's just not true because any luxury hotel knows that the guest experience isn't giving them plastic items to drink out of or to eat off of or to eat with, like plastic utensils. I mean, for example, at the Four Seasons here where I live, you don't get you get a champagne glass or a cocktail glass that's washable, like that's acrylic or some other material that can be washed, but if you drop it, it won't break. So
Right.
that's a myth. And I know that interpreting waste bills is kind of difficult sometimes because you have different size containers. They're picked up at different times. And it's hard to measure. It's like, well, I've got three 64-gallon round barrels that have mixed recycling in them as far as cans and bottles and glass and plastic. They're picked up twice a week. The cardboard's picked up 3 times a week. The trash is picked up every day. It's like, and when you're trying to sort out those bills, when you look at them, it's like, oh, I can't even begin to do this, much less calculate a greenhouse gas emission associated with when it's going to the landfill. So I know that the process that you provide in education, helps with that. The other thing I wanted to mention was the culture. Too many times I've seen two sides of this. On one side, it's a silo initiative and it's the first to go by the wayside because it doesn't have a high priority. It's not built into the business model of the
It's
entity.
not being led.
Yes, it's like a silo, and when things get busy or money's tight, occupancy's low, it's the first thing to go by the wayside. Well, we don't have time. We don't have time to do that right now. It's all hands on deck for this other thing. So the culture component of it is important. And I remember one hotel I worked with. I happened to mention I was sitting in with the green team, and this one gal says, "Well, you'll never get me to give up my plastic water bottle, my disposable water bottle." So I showed her a little video and I explained to her about, well, to everyone, not just, I didn't focus on her. I didn't want to call her out, but how they're microplastics. And when you think about it, you've got all this plastic bottled water in a truck that's not refrigerated. And that plastic just gets, especially in South Florida, just gets hot and hot and hot. And so after all of that, at our next green team meeting, she brought in her reusable beverage container and she said, "You convinced me. I will never drink plastic water, bottled water again." So those things, can really help that education and having everybody all in. And everybody was so excited about it. Like you said, majority of people want to do that. And if you think about it for a minute, if you go to your job every day, it's so redundant. You make the bed, you clean the bathroom, you set the table. It's just rote. And so when you give people a little more to think about and a little more meaning, it gives them something else to hold on to. I'm not just going to work every day and making the bed. I'm making a difference because the way I'm performing my job is better for the environment and for human health. So I love those things. Now you've given us the information on the different categories and the staff engagement. I think that makes or breaks a program is having the, staff involved and excited about it. And you've got to give, rewards and incentives and things like that when they have good ideas or they change a process and things like that. So that's important too. Can you share with us about the guest experience, what you're hearing about that?
Sure. Well, and it's great because it's easy for those that want to ding as a form of resistance versus embrace. And probably on a human level is they're stressed or they think they can't afford it and some other myths that they're believing, which there's too many. It's too easy to fabricate because it's still new as far as general acceptance, right? And people wanting to learn and willing to learn and unblocking their biases. So As far as the guest experience goes, I mean, all the data, and I read reports every week as you do. It is consistently the majority of travelers want to have a positive impact on where they're going. They want to see it impact things locally. They want to see it positively impact environmental things, and they expect it. And the whole, hey, are they going to pay more for it, is really just naivety. Those are the types that are the last to come anyways, but there are a lot of the voices I find out there today, right? And I think it's because they're just afraid of something they don't understand. As an operator, I could guarantee an owner, if they want to hire me, and pay some extra time, and we don't promote professional services, but hypothetically, if they used Greg and paid Audubon, which is less expensive than Greg ever got paid or would charge for his time, to spend 3 weeks with them and then come back every year for a week just to strengthen their programs and prove to them and take it as a challenge that I'll increase revenue further than you're going to feel any new expenses. I could deliver that at anywhere, anytime, any place, because I've gotten confident in understanding it. So the guests are expecting it, but they're not expecting to pay for it. They're expecting it because they want to do business and spend time with people that care about their experience authentically. And without it, it's not authentic, right? You don't know my profile just because you give me a diamond status and I'm getting more points, unless you're also not offering me 2 bottles of water and check it out of a plastic container. So the science and the molecular level of plastics, and the problem is getting ahead of an industry that's really good at marketing how plastics are so recyclable, but 87-90% of them never get recycled, and all the different styles and various. We're having a problem now in glass. In California, most places are no longer accepting glass for recycling. And you think about how immense that is. But plastics, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and guests are aware of it. Those that aren't aware of it, it's like wine. If you don't know about wine, you know somebody in your circles that are really good about it. So you rely on them to educate you. And there's every social circle starting to have somebody that knows something about sustainability on a more scientific and longer term and very broad intellectual perspective. But we can't expect everybody to do that. We just need to find the influencers and keep encouraging them. But we got to get the industry to get off. It's expensive, because we're not expensive, including our travel once every 3 years. For 3 years, spend $3,000. I mean, for what you're going to get out of it, if you use it, because we're not going to do your work for you, but we can certainly give you a lot of nuggets to work from. And there's lots of resources out there, as you well know and have developed, that can help support the training. And on waste, let's talk more about that too, because that's, coming in a couple of years ago to doing this full time, whereas it was always part of my driven efforts. Food was the only thing really getting attention. And it's critical that we do, not just because how much food we waste and how many people are hungry, but because methane is worse than carbon, right? And it's scary to keep talking about that, but we can talk about it enough that people know it's a good thing if you could do it. People have learned about composting, biodigesters, and BioGreen 360. Things the Food Print Group are doing. I mean, there's lots of cool stuff. Ketro, there's lots of new technologies out there that have proven successful, that are being embraced slowly, but are being empowered and enacted. And certainly for anybody that's got a good sustainability program, they've learned to use it. But the waste streams, man, it's disaster. And it's not just here. We hear about all the technology coming out of the EU because they're further along and more advanced. And yet the group that I recently found, that now I'm just doing strategic support for, because no one can touch what they're doing, and it's affordable and it's expandable and it's adaptable and it's cheap. I mean, it's affordable. It's like crazy, but it's very sophisticated in that it can measure all your waste streams no matter where you are. And the US probably is the worst kind of data to have to sift through. And that's where they develop the technology, is in North America. So, that technology is available now, and to follow all your waste streams, to give you targets so that you can actually use measurable, verifiable, documented programs that can increase what you're avoiding and mitigating to get to landfill, and specifically for the recycling types of components, as long as they have their own waste streams. And, I think them, you maybe introduced too, but Z3 Data, I can't sing their praises loud enough. I call them, if you know about hot sauce, and everybody in technology tries to use that as a benchmark to say, hey, we know about hot sauce, it kind of gives you some street cred. Now, that was just the very cool, well-developed, well-priced, well-adopted around the world quickly task management system for engineering, right? That became kind of table stakes and the benchmark. Well, this, I think, Z3 data is kind of the hot sauce for waste streams. And I think it was a couple of European companies that were saying, we're not finding anyone having done it well enough yet. And they found this group, combined Canadian, Ohio, brainiacs in the waste space, and that's who created it. So these guys are amazing, and what they've produced is just solid.
And they're sponsoring this episode of this podcast.
Oh,
I know you didn't.
You tell me before, because then it would felt like I can't talk about them with any passion.
No. Yes, I've talked to them. What they're doing is wonderful, and it's part of what I offer when I do consulting. Like, if you're not going to do, something, broader that takes in all of your KPIs, then let's at least do the waste kind of thing. You touched on several things I want to follow up on. What I hear a lot is no one is asking us for it. And like you said, especially with the bigger brands, they've got all this corporate sustainability stuff on their website. So everybody assumes every brand hotel they go to is doing the same thing, but they're not required to do many of those things. Maybe upload some of the utility data, energy and water and things like that, but they're not required to get a certification. They're not required to do staff engagement. They're not required to do any of those other things. So people aren't asking because they're assuming, especially when they hear, the sustainability reports, they assume that all these brands are doing that. So that's one thing. And the other thing about greenwashing, if you're third party verified, you'll never be accused of greenwashing. And I've seen a lot of it. It's like, do you recycle? Yes. What do you recycle? Cardboard. Anything else? No. Did you get rid of your single use of this and that? One hotel I worked with, I have to share this with you. They had, when you look at a P&L, you don't get this data. You have to go to purchasing to get this data. And it's how many items of plastic, single-use plastic, do you purchase every year?
Right.
And since you're not recycling, all that's going to landfill or an incinerator. Let's count up all the cases, how many items are in a case of all these things that you throw away after you've used it once. This one hotel that's on the beach here, 2.6 million pieces of plastic annually. And they were like, no, that can't be right. So people need to dig a little deeper because when you look at the cost of plastic, yes, it's low, but you can gradually replace some of these things like, well, we have to have all plastic by the pool. It's safety. It's like, no, you don't. You can have bento boxes,
acrylic,
reusable napkins, acrylic cups, and all that stuff. So it's an education. So I kind of push back on that when I hear that. But I'm really interested in hearing about this. Has been my toughest sell is increasing revenue because there's so many non-financial ROIs to consider that people don't consider. And I just posted something recently about that and on LinkedIn. But I've never been able to quantify the revenue. I can always say, the cost savings, got that. But how do you do that?
Well, I think, there's two sides of it, right? There's hard costs and there's soft costs, costs of doing business. There's those types of variants. And you're right. One of them's harder to track, but it's so easy to convey that as long as it's the right ears and the right timing, it's like, how could it not, right? And then the hard ones are, energy and water and waste are all three categories that we know, and there's lots of data. Whether it's doing an audit on your energy, which is often free and provided by your energy provider, that can talk about your building management systems and whether there's an ROI to upgrade those because a lot of them are decades old. Then there's the other ones you can do that no matter what your energy consumption, there's well-proven technology in the guest room with the sensors that can ride off the set points on the thermostats that it's no less than 20, and I've seen it as high as 40 with my own eyes from two of the probably top tier globally systems that are sold that way that I worked with directly with customers, that you're going to get 20 to 40% immediately on that next month's bill reduction. And whether you're starting at a really high bill per room comparatively, or you have the benefit of a LEED platinum certified building to start with and a brand new construction, it doesn't matter. It's still 20 to 40% lower by using this technology. So there's always an ROI. And that should be within 3 years on average. That's what I found to be the case without available incentives, which aren't going away. And they're gonna bob back and forth, but they still exist today, and they're gonna be coming back probably stronger because the energy costs are so volatile that the industries need it, right? So they're going to lobby for it, which means the owners of the hotels are aligned with the sustainability because they don't want to have volatile pricing and energy. So those are the more classic examples of the hard costs ROIs that are very apparent, provable, and mature enough in the market to back up pretty easily. The soft ones, I think about it. First of all, there's so much low hanging fruit that a green team culturally is going to get done by bringing up from the guest facing level staff, letting them be part of the program and what they're going to come up with that gets adopted. And I always use one because it's such an easy example that anybody can relate to. We've all driven cars into a parking lot. Almost a huge part of the industry is you drive your car there, especially for leisure and what have you. And how many garages or parking lots have had a convenient trash can that your car and mine has always got stuff to throw away in? And unfortunately, when we're
Especially when
traveling,
traveling.
yeah, we usually bring it back with us and then throw it away because it's not like convenient. And I saw this at one of our site inspections. It came from an engineer who was the painter in the department for a small boutique hotel. And he's like, listen, why don't we put not just trash cans by all the elevators and the main access points where they're out of their car so that they see them, but why don't we just paint on the wall a graphic of a green tree against a white background and have, recycled cans there? And I had never seen that in a parking lot, but that was one of thousands of things we see that come up from internal discussions that somebody said, yeah, I can afford a third of a can of paint and a stencil. And I already have recycled cans. I'll just make sure they're there and we pick them up. I mean, that didn't cost them anything, but what it's producing has huge impact. And then you think about the power and the culture of that employee bringing up, getting recognized for it, or being able to be on the green team and having it enabled. Boy, that's contagious stuff. And that's right along the old world craft of hospitality, which you touched on earlier, that I'm not so sure orientation teams know how to do that effectively like when we were coming up and it was table stakes. So it probably needs to be back to the future in investing in that kind of orientation training that, hey, this is one of the world's oldest, most noblest crafts. It's spiritual. It's in all religions. It's in all human interaction. And it's a feel good thing to be able to be on the service side delivering it. And I think that gets lost in its value of working in it. That's still what attracts me to the industry, 40 years later. And so I think there's a couple of things you touched on and those. And then, one employee being retained for 6 months pays for your program, and 5 employees pays for an investment in something that has an ROI in its own. So, the math is pretty simple. You have to accept those soft costs, knowing that your turnover, and you want to measure your turnover between having a non-existent to a high-performing green team, that's measurable. Let me help you do that because you already know what's costing you for your property at a big property for your retention and your recruitment. And you already know those numbers because that's in your budget because you're budgeting for turnover, fortunately. So, you think about it on the soft costs and benefits, you can put them into metrics. I would say starting from getting involved in a program, which is demonstrating only commitment and that you're going to start doing more and get more organized about having a green team and a sustainability program, to charting to becoming a high performance green team. And you can measure what at the starting point your turnover is in your service areas. You can pick one, the most challenging one. I can show you improvement on it within a year, right? And then you can measure implementation and how that changes because in their annual budgeting, you're budgeting based on your history of turnover and recruitment costs. And you're fighting in HR to support all the operating areas, all those hard to fill jobs. Well, let's see how the impact is, and those metrics will be there for you. So if you can only prove it using history and buying in because nobody's
lagging
that data set.
indicators.
Yeah, but they're all there, and those lagging become leading as soon as you have one. And the industry, I think the other thing you touched on, I think we should discuss the big brands, right? They're reporting ESG. They're struggling to do the waste, and Z3 Data is right on time to help solve that affordably and
Yeah.
quickly. So it's great to champion for them because I've not met anybody else, big companies that add that in, but they're really building it and it's expensive. And you got to be using the rest of the stuff, but which is not bad, but I don't think most will adopt. The big brands today maybe manage 30% of their portfolios, whereas roll the clock 10 back years, maybe 15 or 20, and it used to be 70%. So you've
think last I checked, it was like some of them near only 10% did they
so
own and
right.
manage.
But
Some brands.
if you follow those, they got a pretty robust sustainability program. Unfortunately, they're not ready for that to roll out because they don't own very many of the assets anymore, and they don't own most of the ones they manage, but they tend to be from ownership groups that are, the cat's meow in the REIT world of hospitality. So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of good things happen there. Unfortunately, they can't lead enough, but it needs to be met at the grassroots level, and that's going to be driven by customers. I'm a big fan of the inversion theories that were real popular and seem to lose their way when people get stressed out, but it's still the truth. The market is driving what the industry needs to do for them, and they're
Yeah.
expecting sustainability. And as soon as that's more widely realized and people are now it's a competitive market, doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often to our experience time frame. Last 20 years, really not that competitive. It's like, how do you compete for more growth faster without
Yeah.
really delivering but so much, right? And
Yeah.
and and uh and I think
Unless
that's
you have a wave machine.
exactly right. And it was the economies and the world patterns were creating a wave machine. You couldn't build new hotels fast enough. Now that's all constricting in a way we haven't seen in decades, and it's going to
Yeah.
become more competitive. As soon as the one sees the other, we're a good copycat industry getting market share, and they looked at all the things to distinguish them differently. Sustainability is going to start rising up in focus pretty quickly. So I think there's a tsunami out there. I just don't know what the tipping point timing is going to be, and it's for the right reason. And again, I challenge anybody to challenge me that I can't get the ROIs metrics in place that more than actually contributes to your bottom line.
I have a question about that because at a property that I worked for 10 years, over 10 years, I saved them $1.3 million doing all of the sustainability stuff. Now it was 10 years, but it paid for my salary
I'll
for
bet.
those,
And when
definitely.
you're not working there, these aren't things that go away just because you're not there driving them. Once you've embedded them and part of the culture, it grows, right? You're planting seeds, you're nourishing them, you're bringing them to maturity, and then they don't die.
Unless there's a change in ownership. I asked the general manager who I
Good
reported
point.
to. I said, if a person in sales lands a big group, they get a slap on the back and handed a cigar and a scotch. I said,
Publicly.
yes. I said, I saved you $1.2 million and there's nothing there for me. He said, well, it doesn't work that way. Revenue is king. I said, why can't we use some of the cost savings for this and invest in
Ooh,
that?
ooh.
Said, oh, we can't do that. I'm like, I've still to this day, and you seem to have a great finance background in hospitality. Explain that to me.
Well, I think that was an easy thing, and it's an out. There's another company, and in Europe, they're growing like crazy that are got a beachhead here in the U.S. In fact, they're I think based in Florida near you. I think it's D2O, and they're general manager data oriented. And what I'm suggesting is worth investigating further because what they produce for a general manager is a 21st century data report that isn't just revenue anymore. It has all the other categories of expense like energy and water and waste, anything that you can get metrics for, because now you got a budget for it, you got a forecast for it. It should go up and down with your occupancy and your types of market that season or whatever is in your business matrix. And it's right there in front of your eyes because hotel general managers not too far down the road are going to see all of that top and bottom of the balance sheet day to day forecasted on that level in order to stay profitable. They can't keep driving just the revenue side. So, and that's not going away. That isn't just like a new thing. That's not going away. That's going to be challenging for the foreseeable future. So if you're not being able to look at energy so you can watch anomalies and make sure you have the visibility to make sure it gets addressed, you can't save the energy or the water you wasted for a month. You have one leaky
Yeah.
toilet, it's thousands of dollars. You got 10 of them or 50 of them, that's a lot of
Yeah.
money, and you don't get that money back because you have to pay the water bill. So, a general manager's future, a general manager's rewards, bonuses, upward mobility, and that's going to pepper down to all the executive committee and stuff in short order. So this company, D2O, puts together whatever they're currently using. They add this layer so the daily sheets can measure these categories in a way that's useful and practical and on spot for that day. And D2O, I believe, is the company, and they're doing a good job. And it's coming to the U.S. This is one of the things that's being innovated in the EU first because they're expecting it, and yet you have to do it, and it's being legislated. But it's also saving them money, right? You want to
Yeah.
see
Right.
ROI,
Why?
pay
I
attention to the
know.
money. It's not just the incoming money. It's like that's glorified. So you should have been rewarded on the expense side, right? Because if I save
I
$1
agree.
million, that's no different than bringing them $1 million. Well, yeah, it is. That's going on the bottom line. The other one is filtered after expenses, so in part goes to the bottom line. So there we go.
My thoughts exactly. Well, I don't work there anymore, so that's what happened there.
Right. Well, I think I remember general managers saying, Wi-Fi, my guests don't want to do that. They want to use their phones. And it's like, yeah, okay. Where are you now with those megaphones? But that at the time felt good because I'm at a property that, no, we only use, we get 5 staff for all of our guests want to be peppered with attention all the time. I was like, yeah, that's not the case anymore. I don't care how upscale you are. They want to
Leave
choose
me
when they
alone.
want. Yeah, they want to choose when they want that interaction and how they want it, and you better be that tuned in, right? Yeah.
It's like a server coming up to the table too many times to ask if everything's okay. It's like after a while, it's like,
Oh, the
okay,
second one, you tell right away if they're just going through the motions of how they were trained because they don't understand the
yeah.
craft, and they're in a noble craft. So it goes back to all these cultural roots that it got to be brought
Yes.
back.
I want to talk to you about AI now. Well, first, the online travel agents, the OTAs are, last year they came out with an edict and they got together as a group and said, Travelists leading that, no longer self-reporting of your green initiatives and what have you. No more checking those boxes on your profile on our website. You got to be third party verified. They decided which ones they accepted. They vetted them all and what they accepted. Google did the same thing. But I do know that hotels don't like the OTAs. That's not a secret because they have to give, commissions to them. They want to get bookings directly, but I don't think OTAs are going anywhere. And now there was just something I saw today that you actually reposted about the use that the OTAs are going to be using Chat GPT to get people to book through that or get information to book through there.
They
There's a
already
new
are.
thing that Chat GPT came out with, right?
Right.
Yes.
They
Can
were
you talk
already
to us about AI in general and the OTAs as
Sure.
well?
Sure. Let me do that in reverse order. General
Okay.
comments about OTAs. So you're right. OTAs are the necessary evil. It's really nice to have a hotel and have spigots to open that you don't have to
Mhm.
drive business, right? So they serve a purpose, and you're right. That's not going away. They take tremendous amount of market share, and they're a tech company. They're not really in the hospitality business. They're in the hospitality to consumer tech industry and marketing
Yeah.
industry. So that's one of the rubs is they're taking a big chunk of the money, right? But they're not responsible for the delivery, the upkeep, the staff, or any of the experience. So the owners and operators don't really get their fair share. And I would concur in most, unless you're a big bully, you could get, it's like, then you're paying like you would for a travel agency before historically,
Mhm.
but the other ones are getting beaten to death, 30-40%. It's not unusual. So then you have a tap you can turn on and off. And all their data tends to be more, there's some business travel for sure in there, but it's mostly leisure. So it's maybe
Mhm.
20% overall of the mix on average. It could be more and
Mhm.
less different times of year, but it's also weighted towards leisure travel. So
Mhm.
while they have very good data and statistics, they're missing all the industries direct booking stuff, and Travelist needs to figure out how to get more of that information included. And they're well on their way. They're doing great things. So I look forward to seeing where we're going with this new initiative on the accommodations. And they purposely did it to air travel because it's got a lot less moving parts, right? So that's why this one's coming on now. So that's kind of some general comments about OTAs and a little bit about Travelers, who I adore, and I think they're doing great things. As far as artificial intelligence, it's moving so fast and furious, and its biggest users are revenue management. And it's not that it's new, it's just that it's getting easier and easier to use, and its ability to do even bigger things faster is what's being introduced by that LinkedIn post. So it was already being well used, and they're one of the bigger users of it are the OTAs because, again, they're marketing and tech savvy. That's what they do, right? Hotel businesses are in the craft of hospitality, and it's hard to compete, although they all have departments and spending a lot of money to make sure they're keeping their market share. One thing people don't really realize much, and it falls into the sustainability technology in the guest room, is that hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent, probably close to $1 billion by now, for hotels to go to digital keys. And it's like, but if you understand why, it had nothing to do with how they integrate with the rest of the room or the guest experience, really. Those are byproducts. It had to do with that's how you get your key, because you don't get it when you book through an OTA, you get it when you book direct. And that's why it's attached to your technology. Now that maybe is fading some, but was the impetus. Here's an industry that doesn't want to spend a couple thousand just to invest in sustainability, but they spent a whole bunch of money, and they're still spending it to get those door locks to help secure and anchor some benefits that are something that an OTA can't offer necessarily. So
I didn't know
who
that.
would associate those two? But these are smart people, and they're fighting back. And those are the big brands that have the muscle to be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. That's very interesting. What do you think about? I use AI every day. It's just amazing to me. And sometimes I pit one against the other, and I'll give the same questions to, you know, Chat GPT and Claude just to see if, who's better, which one do I think is, you know, uh, fits what I'm looking for. So I'm really all in with AI, and I think the hotels should. I mean, if for some reason I hear these things, and it just sounds like a lot of things they're talking about in finance and everything else aren't looking at some of these things. They're looking at the traditional metrics, KPIs. They're not looking at all the other KPIs that you could have. And maybe we should come up with maybe you should come up with some of these KPIs that are non-traditional, that are about sustainability and social impact, and have some case study, because it sounds like you have a great deal of experience as to try to. Yeah, you do. I looked you up so that we can kind of convince people there are other reasons to do this. There was a recent webinar that someone hosted for me, and they did a poll, and the number one answer to that, when the question was, what is the biggest challenge to sustainability? And it was lack of knowledge. That's where I'm training. Okay. And the second one was unknown ROI.
Right.
So,
And you can ask. So yesterday I was doing a presentation, a sustainability educational session for members of hotel, finance, and technology professionals, HFTP, at their annual conference in Orlando. And the session before mine, I got to sit in on, and it was the most brilliant chief artificial technology officer for a group called Think, who's very savvy about the hotel business. And they were giving the latest update, and it was like some of it was just a week old, because things are changing so quickly in that space. And I mean, the overall message is you better get on the train, because it's moving pretty fast. But it's going to apply everywhere, right? And a lot of people are using it and are comfortable using it and are getting benefit from it. So why aren't you, right? There's never the wrong time to do something that's going to bring you back. You can set up a program in Claude, which they were referring to a lot, or in the latest version of ChatGPT, that it says, listen, here's my work focus. Here's what I do. Here's my job description. Here's how I'm evaluated. This is how much hours I spend, estimate, whatever. And what are the 5 best things I can do to get 5 hours back a week? Or how do I contain my work to only 40 hours a week and do it successfully better so I can get home every night
Yeah.
to my family or friends or my loved ones for
Oh,
dinner? And it can do that for you in a very good way. You just have to understand how to use it. And so the
yes.
fundamentals are key, just like sustainability. The fundamentals are key, right? Once you
Yeah.
get those, and they're not hard and they're not rocket science, the science is done for you, right?
Yes.
Then it's committing to it's like, okay, I'm going to jump in and make this a part of my routine to make it a more personal experience that I think is sometimes needed. I'll share mine that, I'm spending a lot of time living as often as I can on a sailboat that I hope to eventually be a virtual nomad
Oh,
at least a couple of times a year and work from here. So I'm doing this interview from the salon. So, but I mentioned that because living on it full time, being tuned into the tides and the weather on a more intimate level has given me a sense of being more attached to the outdoors that I haven't had in
nature.
my life, and I wasn't aware I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And, personally starting to think, every time I end up opening up one of those plastic bottles of water, I also swallow a chunk of guilt that in my upbringing from Catholic schools on, that accumulates and it helps motivate me to be even better personally, being more sustainable. And I'm on a
Yes.
journey and I got a long ways to go, and that's okay. I love myself for it, right? And that's what hotels need to think about. The journey's pretty far for most of them, but you can make great improvements and impactful strides that are measurable in the first 6 months, right? So it's a matter of choosing to allow it to be a tool that works for you, like AI, than against you. Now, sitting in that session with this really smart guy, and I think the organization is called Think, he was a real geek, right? He's a geek's geek kind of person, but he's also able to convey it in all kinds of levels and languages that were helpful and easy for the audience. But one of the things they get wrong is AI can solve sustainability. And no, AI doesn't solve anything. What it does is it empowers ways that we can do it more effectively. So instead of spending $100,000 a year on this sustainability initiative, what if I spent 20,000 of that to prevent continued deforestation in the Amazon, because I'll get more carbon bang for the buck. It'll
Yes.
triple my overall bang for the buck that I can report to Wall Street. That's not bad thinking, and I don't want to take,
Yeah.
$20,000 away from sustainability, but that is another way to do it. That's more able to produce a verifiable outcome than maybe some of the carbon credit offerings that are still skeptical versus the ones that are really emerging now. They're quite credible, right? So it's thinking more globally. Think, live locally, act locally, think globally. It's been around for a long time. It's a little trite, it's a little cliche, but actually it's really important. And that's what sustainability is all about. So it helps and make that more depthful in your personal life, in your work life, and then in your happiness and wellness. So my most recent article is about wellness and sustainability. Wellness meets sustainability, and it was
Yes.
co-authored by a specialist who I adore. She's brilliant. She's the director of wellness and sustainability at the Ojai Village Resort in California. And they just do too many things that I can't talk about because they're not the ones we grade, but the stories are endless about all the cool things they've been doing that they don't really share that widely yet.
Yes.
So I
That's
covered a lot of
amazing.
things there, but you get me excited because it's easy to be passionate about it. And when you're passionate about something, you give a lot more than you can when you have to do routine work that's, doesn't get you excited.
Exactly. And I've been doing this on my own for 10 years, and anybody else would have given it up because I haven't made very much money in the past. Things are opening up now, but
You're a little ahead of your time, but you've already got a trove of assets, especially with that training curriculum, right? So
thank you. Yes, yes. I can't imagine doing anything else. And truth be known, I really don't know how to do anything else at this point.
that's
Right.
true. I don't know. I don't know how I wouldn't make this a major part of my job function for the rest of my life. And now having a almost 3-year-old granddaughter, it's
Oh,
just
yeah,
another level of importance. Yeah.
for sure. Well, let's bring it full circle. Okay, Audubon International, what do you see the future for your organization?
Sure. Well, we're growing on all fronts. Our community programs, our golf programs, and our hospitality. And I think we're well prepared to scale, but do it more credibly than the whole virtual audit thing. Um, so I think we're well positioned to help the industries that we're in get there faster. And all of our programs are more about impact than they are about cost, right? But we can't afford to give them away because otherwise we wouldn't be sustainable. And we understand I'm a
Right.
private sector guy, so I start there on a sustainable hospitality, a property level or a portfolio level, and then I work. How do you work it in? And what things can you do first? Because not everybody's going to be the same, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's not that hard if you have the experience and the know-how and the willingness to explore it. And so I think good things are ahead for the organization, Audubon International. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to have joined them and help kind of reboot and redirect us for the future, which is now because it's fast. Sustainability is happening at the same speed as artificial intelligence because changes are
It's like,
coming that quickly. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the future is coming every 10 minutes.
Right.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we talk about volatility and the hard costs. One I forgot to mention, and I really think we need to put at the forefront on the top of the list, is the volatility of the insurance market. Insurance mitigation is driving, insurance and climate mitigation is driving the crazy growth in insurance costs. And I'm not talking about the new healthcare stuff that's really a mess that's
Yeah.
we got to get it fixed kind of quickly because I just saw my premiums for next year. It's like 90% change for my monthly. But anyways, another tangent.
Yeah.
But just businesses overall, real estate, property, it's unsustainable, and we think energy has been volatile. Insurance has already started off, and it's more volatile. And leaders, there was one from Aximilizim in New York who was talking about how they're investing a lot of money to help develop and advance for their built assets insurance plans, ways to mitigate and then give them lesser expensive insurance. So if you don't think it's in getting different quotes matters now based on being sustainable, this is the best way to mitigate that because it's around the corner. So it's not like 5 years out. These are going to impact your
Yeah.
expenses starting next year in 2026, which is 2 months away. And you want to get the biggest return on investment for embracing sustainability. This wasn't available when you started 10 years ago or when I started 2 years ago, but that's how fast it's moving and coming. So I think
Yeah.
metrics on that need to be applied to your sustainability programs. And the big corporate brands know this. They see it. They've seen the data and they've seen it and they can forecast it much more accurately than everybody else's hotel. So that's
Yeah.
coming quickly.
I'm glad you added that point. That brings us full circle. We've covered everything and more. I can't thank you enough, Greg Poirier. He is the global director of Audubon International. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I'm the global director for the hospitality certification.
Hospitality.
Right.
Yes,
And that
yes.
includes
Wonderful.
anything with the built environment that's around hospitality, resorts, hotels. Yep.
Yeah, and I like that it's not just hotels, that you have a bigger footprint to help people become more sustainable. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
I always enjoy this. Thanks so much, Kathy. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. If you're ready to take meaningful action and set your property apart as a leader in sustainability, my company, Sustainable Hospitality Solutions, is here to help. Our training program provides hotels with a clear step-by-step path to earning ECO certification. Please go to sustainablehospitalitytraining.com. Thank you.